Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to my next episode of the Winning Mindset Academy. And for all you connections out there of mine that are following, my podcast, as you know, I have a lot of very interesting people that I bring on to do an interview with, and today I have a lady called Joanna James, who I met on this platform actually on LinkedIn. And she really impressed me when I went through her experience as to what she has achieved and what is she still doing in life and contributing towards humanity. I would put that. She's had a very, very, very varied background, from starting off as an architect, would you believe it, and then becoming a general manager of a mortgage finance company. And then lately, her latest ventures in a quest called Successful Women, which I really want to explore later. And by the way, she's also an author, folks, of Mind, Body, and Space. So really interesting women. Welcome, Joanna James. How are you?
Thank you, Philip. That's a wonderful introduction. I'm very, very well, very excited to be here with you and excited to have the opportunity to be on your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanna. I suppose, like anything else, let's start at the beginning. I take it that you're actually an architect by your qualified profession, yeah? So let's start there. I mean, what happened in that part of your life, and we'll go forward.
Okay. Well, what a wonderful part of life. It was a fantastic time in my life. If ever you get the opportunity to work with anybody that's gone through architecture school, I say just hire them. Very, very intensive, very collaborative, and a very discipline to learn, to move between being really creative, really scientific, and looking at things multi-dimensionally, learning project management. It was a wonderful time in my life. So I just loved being an architect, and in particular working in residential design and creating people's homes, creating that magic place for their family to be. It was a wonderful time in life.
Fantastic. What, apart from the obvious thing, I mean, you're doing it to help other people to design their life. Was that the initial driving force for you to take on that profession?
Well, that's a very interesting story, because I was actually a maths and calculus geek at school. And believe it or not, I was one of the few women in a class of many, many boys that was doing college level calculus. I went to high school in the United States. And I wanted to do something after school that was maths based. And it was suggested to me that I should consider architecture. It wasn't till I got in the degree, I'd actually enrolled and came back to Australia to start my studies, that I realized there was a high level of creativity and artistic need. And so I actually enrolled in night school to learn how to draw. So I was studying in the day at architecture school, and I was in night school learning how to draw. And that was the first time I realized that the prejudice we have in our mind about being logical and creative, you're either maths based or you're good at English, you're either or, it's simply not true. And it is possible to move between the spectrum of things for many, many people, particularly if you're encouraged to explore. And so it was a wonderful lesson for me in life to open up my mind to what's possible for me to do.
That's amazing. I mean, just on your last word, what's possible, and virtually, the whole basis of the Winning Mindset Academy is based on that, the unknown and the possibility of what we can achieve. And you touched on something there, and as you well know, you're in the mindfulness space as well. We talk about left brain and right brain, and left brain being more the rational, more the calculative, more mathematical, and the right brain is the creativity. And what you've just shown is the fact that, that blending of the two is very much possible. I mean, humans in general are not quite one or the other, but they might be more inclined to be more one than the other. And some always stay in that space and maybe don't believe that there is a possibility on the other side. And you've kind of married up to both, and you found that out by accident. And then that sparked up a creativity, and off you went.
Yes, absolutely. And also around the same time working with families and couples creating their homes, it was also the time that I realized that a big part of creating the project was guiding them through their hopes, their wishes, their dreams, their fears. There'd usually be one person in the marriage that was really good at understanding the plans, and the other one, was terrified by it, couldn't read the drawings, didn't want to know about it. And so I had to be able to adapt to different people's needs and languages, and also to support them as a couple going through what is often the most stressful thing, is building a home. Financially stressful. It's often a difficult time as people are moving spaces and waiting for things to complete. So it was a wonderful journey for me. It taught me lots of things about the diversity of people as well as the diversity within myself. So yeah, it's fantastic training.
Oh, wonderful. It sounded like that gave you a real good base for your future life, which was probably also the unknown. I mean, one can plan, but one doesn't really know what is around the corner. As you've probably found in your life, that's what I found interesting. As in my life as well. If you asked me 20 years ago, I'd be doing podcasts. I said, what do you mean? What is that? So how things change. So what was this in your late 20s that you were exploring all of this at the time around then?
Well, actually, it was in my early 20s.
Oh,
I was incredibly young. I was the youngest dual licensed architect and builder as a woman in Australia.
okay.
And I did some practical work in New York. And when I came back to Australia, I realized that I wanted to fast track. So I went to UTS and did a year to make sure I had my practical experience, because you have to get registered when you leave university. So within 18 months of leaving university, I had the 3 or 4 years work experience, and I sat the bar to become a registered architect, because many female architects, they finish the degree, but they never actually get registered. It's quite a rigorous discipline. You have to have sort of multi-functions of what you've had experience in, including contract administration, a variety of site and construction administration. So I was actually very young when I completed that. And I was in my early 20s, and that was my mid 20s was when I met my past husband. So that's when life changed.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll stop you there for a second before we go to that next stage in your life. Thank you for that. When I'm thinking of you in your early 20s, I mean, how many people or girls around your age at that time were actually, number one, thinking about becoming an architect, then getting the registration, as you call it, which I never really realized how tough it was till you've just mentioned that. And is it a quite a male-dominated sort of industry, or is it? Don't know.
So it was very interesting. I was going through university in the mid 90s, and at the time at university, it was a very balanced environment. There were lots of women in study with me, but when you got out into the work arena, things were rather different. And particularly when you got to site, incredibly different. I mean, construction was a very, very male-dominated industry at that time.
Right.
And so you've got the picture, right? I'm this young 20-year-old woman turning up to site. And I remember the first exchange I had with one of the contractors who wanted to pull the wool over my eyes and explain that, the contract price needed to be upped because we hadn't allowed for things. And unfortunately for him, he didn't realize that I knew the documentation backwards and forwards, and pointed that out to him. And after that, he had respect for me, and we worked together fabulously ever since. But it was a very big challenge. And I remember one time I went on site to learn what some people were doing, and the guys literally took one look at me, said smoko, walked off site, wouldn't speak to me. So I've seen it all. I've seen it all. So yes, it was a very male-dominated industry at the time, despite university appearing to be different.
Yes, it is interesting how that happens, and probably going back to what you were saying earlier about a lot of women just had the degree but never did anything more with that, and that's probably where the fallout was. But also what you've just described about it is tough. I mean, you had to make your own way in a male-dominated industry, and maybe looking at that going, maybe it was a too hard basket. It's quite interesting. I mean, I think I mentioned to you when we were talking casually that I came from a a female-dominated sort of industry brand company. I worked for L'Oreal for many years, and we had a great intake of females at the bottom end, but it dissipated at the top end. And so as a company, they made a conscious effort over the last 2 decades to change that because of so many reasons, which is fantastic to see. But yes, in that particular world, do you think there's any difference now? Is it slowly being more received well with women are there more women now in this space that you know of?
Well, I mean, my working life is not so much the day-to-day on construction sites, although, look, I would say, yes, it would have changed. I know that there are a lot of, female carpenters and female brickies and female plasters and female painters. So I know that there are a lot of females actually working in the contracting space. And clearly, like other professions, there are a lot of women coming up the ranks. But, when you get to the higher level of business negotiations and who's got the control, I would imagine that it's still probably fairly on par with other industries that we have. So at the moment, if I look at the changes in the next phase of my career in the banking and finance arena, I mean, it's significantly changed, and yet there's still some days that I go to a meeting and I'm the only woman in the boardroom and there's 20 men and me. So, there still is this gap. And I guess that's been a bit of a theme in my life that, I've had to show up and often be the only woman in the room and learn to be comfortable with that and understand how to hold my own and how to get respect for who I am and what I have to contribute. I think the key is not to feel intimidated by that. That's the big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, thank you for that. I think that's a powerful thing, that what you've just said, what you've learnt to adapt and had to actually embrace, and not be intimidated. Understand that you're equal there, and you've got a lot that you can bring to the table, and that you are actually listened to as well, which is the other side of it. There's a lot of things going on right now where, yes, women might occupy the positions, but are they listened to is the other part of it. Are we taking them seriously? And I suppose you've had to sort of make sure that you were strong enough to be able to, create that and make that happen. Thank you for that. Let's go on to your next stage. You mentioned earlier about when you said your past husband. So, and then you landed up in mortgage finance. Yeah.
Yes. So
how did that transition happen, by the way?
Well, it was an interesting one. I mean, I always had the sort of character that loved to learn. I was never really afraid of taking on lots of responsibility. And so, when I met Peter, we decided to build a business together. And actually, the skills that I had served me very well, because at that point in time, banking was going through a change with a lot of non-banks coming into the sector. It was the first time, Aussie home loans was hitting the scene, interest rates were coming down. There was a big change happening and this movement to look at banking differently.
Yeah.
And so I used a lot of my creativity and a lot of my organizational skills, everything from designing logos to hiring people to implementing projects, to creating marketing campaigns, to looking at the systems and the processes. So it was a fascinating time. I literally started with him, putting the paper in the photocopier, answering the phone, filling out the applications, startup, doing everything. Yeah. And the first 5 years, we grew very, very quickly. We were BRW's fastest growing company 3 years in a row. I would be hiring people on a Thursday night and building the desks for them to sit at on the weekend for them to start on Monday. And so it was a very dynamic time in the business. I learned a lot about building a business, working with people. I also did, events. We did these massive conferences, and, a lot of other companies would outsource them, and I would organize everything. We would do it all internally. And so I brought my creativity and my sense of fun and passion and enjoyment to the team to what I did. And I really worked in the operations of building that business as it grew. And we just celebrated the 20-year anniversary of Mortgage Ezy. So we do about $1.5 billion worth of home loans a year. and there's about 200 people in the team. So from those early days of being the only one, it's a little bit different now. But it was a very, very dynamic time, lots of growth, and lots of challenges, lots of challenges as the business went through different stages of its development. But definitely the architectural skills helped me, because it was this imaginative quality, this creative quality, this, organizing, planning quality, bringing things into reality. This, you could almost call architecture like training and manifesting, because it is essentially you're learning to imagine in your mind, see something before it's even conceived of, and then create the plans to build it and make it real. And so you can apply that to a building, you can apply that to a business, you can apply that to your personal life, anything. And so the next 20 years were also an incredible journey. And along the way, I did all of our office fit outs. I won some sustainable awards. So I always had my hand in some sort of design or creativity while I was working within the finance business as well. So yeah, it was a very exciting time indeed.
Fantastic. So you said you met your husband, you build this business. What time frame? Did you say 20 years?
It's 20 years old now. Yes. From we just celebrated in April.
Wow. That's amazing. And obviously that's still going very well. And it sounds it's a very successful organization currently.
Yes, it's thriving. It's actually expanding. It's taking on the next level of evolution. I stepped up out of operations into the GM role a couple of years ago, so that was really wonderful for me to get to the next level of my career growth, and the next level of challenges. With the company being at a different size, a different complexity. COVID obviously brought, a lot of rapid change to businesses generally. So adjusting to that, but the business is doing really well, and we're gearing up for the next 20 years. So,
wow, fantastic! And obviously, you're GM, and you said your past husband. So I was a little bit confused there. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, a lot of people refer to their ex. I think that's a little bit demeaning. Okay. So in 2016 was probably the dramatic turning point in my life when we went through a marriage separation. So one of the unusual things was that we continued to work with each other, which was very challenging for both of us, and also for the business. But, we had worked together for many years before. But that point in my life was some significant changes for me, and were very, very challenging. It was a very dark time. It was, what they call the, night of the soul, deep reckoning. There were some mornings all I could do was lift myself up off the bathroom floor, and work was my only focus, and it was, distressing. So a lot of rapid changes, and a lot of questioning began for me around who I am, what had happened in my life, how did I end up where I was, where do I want to be, what's really important to me. And I had some very large realizations about the things that I had yet to learn in my life. And what I realized was, if a woman like me that had had all these amazing opportunities and success and experience and awards and, multi-award businesses and all of these things, still was having things that I needed to understand and refine and implement in my life, then there's probably a whole lot of other women out there in the world that would be going through that too. Yes. And so that was the time that I really decided, okay, I've had enough of being the only woman in the room. Now it's time for me to get out there and to start supporting other women. And so that was the big shift for me.
Wow, fantastic. So, you had a lovely life, you're at an all-time high, and of course, separation or divorce, it's high on the stress level, as they say. And of course, you went, all the way down, but understanding, which shows that we're all humans, right? I mean, we're not robots. We have emotions, we have feelings. But I think the message that I want to get out there is, what do you do with it? Do you just sit there and accept it and say, well, that's it for me? Or do you get up and do something about it, which is exactly what you've done. I talk about the mindset because I'm in that space of leadership and mindset and how we think. And I say that every day we have two choices when we get up. we've got two choices to make. And hopefully most people, I would say, take the choice of, I'm going to have a great day today. Or, oh my gosh, what's ahead of me? I don't want to go to work. What's it's going to happen that I don't like, rather than the glass half full. And obviously you've taken the one as a glass half full and said, right, I'm going to make this day great, which is another thing that also attracted me to talking to you, because I could see that element about you. I refuse to be knocked down. I can do something about it. And the other thing I can see is the fact that I suppose it resonates with a lot of people. Two things: working with your partner or husband, or the other way around, is not always easy. All right, it can be
No.
terrible, or it can be fantastic. Of course, in your case, yes, things happen, but you've made it work. Now, I asked you the question: you've made it work. Your general manager, your husband's the manager director, is it, overseeing the whole thing? But you're working
Yes.
with each other right now. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple things to that. They always talk about first level consequences and second level consequences. So the first decision that's easy to make is often difficult in the long run. And a lot of people said to me at the time, "You're crazy. You should leave. You should do your own thing." But there were things that were unfinished there for me. There were things in the relating space with him that I needed to work through. There were things within myself and my own professional journey that I needed to be able to do. And, I had a great love for the people and the business and the company. A lot of these people I've worked with for, 15, 17, 18 years, they're my family. So,
Yeah.
For me, while it was still a very transitional time with, the owners of the business going through a separation and then also coming into COVID, I wasn't going to leave the business without making sure that it was going to get through to the next level of its trajectory. So, that was just a personal moral choice that I made because it was a family business and I wanted to make sure that, it and everyone that it looks after, including all of our clients and brokers, were okay. So that was the decision that I made. But yes, not always easy for either of us. But in the long run, I'm a better person for it. And, I'm really proud of the decision that I made, because not many people would have made it.
Sure is, and it is an amazing decision that you made, because again, the message is that you were thinking beyond yourself. I mean, yes, you were in a dark place, but you were thinking about the business, the people in the business that you got to know very well, like family, and then the stakeholders out there. And that in itself is something you should be proud of. It's and as you said, it's made you a better person, and everyone's in a win-win situation. And sort of it's saying, right, here are my personal feelings, but I really need to put that aside. I really need to look at the bigger picture. And you did that. And of course, it's taking care of your personal side as well. Tell me, do you have kids at all as well?
Yeah, so I've got 4 kids, two by birth, two by marriage. The two elder ones are, mid-30s now. So I was very young when I became a stepmom, and my youngest is 17 and 22.
Wow.
So I never really quite fitted into the molds with a lot of other women at the time, because I was working in the business and doing things. I had younger kids, older kids. I was married before most of my friends were. So for a long time, I was sort of the odd one out, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And I was used to having to sort of do it alone, really. And deal with complexity from one end of the spectrum to the other. How do you have a newborn baby and a teenager at the same time? So, that's just, I guess, been another theme that, has run in my life. But in a sense, it's also become a skill. I've become really good at variety.
Yes. I mean, in hindsight, yes, it would have been very tough for you. But did you think that whole experience made you a more resilient person, more stronger to deal with what's ahead of you?
Oh, absolutely. And look, I think I've always been fairly courageous. I had a very adventuresome, courageous father. I always had to do lots of boy stuff. I was driving tractors and driving boats and even shooting rifles and, all sorts of things like that. And just reflecting on what you were sharing earlier, I went to school in the States. I went to an all-girls school, but we had classes in the boys' school. And when I got into my love of calculus and maths, all of my classes were in the boys' school. So by the time I'd walk back to the girls' school to have lunch, I'd have no time to eat. So for a year, I ate lunch in the boys' school. So I literally was the only girl in the lunchroom eating lunch. And so it sort of set me up for this reality of being the only woman in the room. So I got that experience early on. But look, at heart, I'm actually incredibly sensitive, as a person, and have very, very deep feelings, and I love that depth of emotion that I bring, but I've always had this kind of fiery, courageous streak in me, and this need to step up and do it so that other people can see that they can do it too. From a very young age, I was always given, prefect positions at school, and, at high school, I was always, the head of this and the head of that. And it was always about encouraging other people to be able to see that they could do it too. So, that's been a big theme for me in life.
Wow. You keep saying the only woman in the room. I think your book should have been titled The Only Woman in the Room.
Maybe that's the second one.
The second one. I like that. There's a big message behind that one. All righty. So let's move on to what you're doing now, which is kind of where I met you through LinkedIn, and I was very happy with that. And it's quite interesting that the person that introduced you to this side of successful woman, is that correct?
Yes.
Is someone that we both know in common. So Romna Holter. So I thought, wow, what a small world it is. So share that story with us. I'm eager to hear it.
Yeah, so around the time that I was really redefining who I was and the things that I needed to learn in life, I came across Ron, and he became my mentor, which was wonderful. And I actually remember the day I got up and I said, right, that's it. I'm going to go get myself a mentor. I'm going to go find what I need to know, and I'm going to get out of this place. And so I had met Ron at a course that we had done together, and I rang him and said, this is what I want to do. And he said, well, you do know that I mentor people. I said, great. So you're taking me on, and this is how we're going to do it. And so we then had this beautiful working relationship, and I've learned a lot from him. And Ron has an incredible background as a man. He is all about creating the opportunity, not only for women, but also for men, because he has a successful male, but for women to really become empowered and to do what they want to do and to create the lifestyle of their dreams. And so he comes from, a financial advising background. He's an author, he's a speaker, he owns, successful businesses. He understands entrepreneurship. And so, he's got this really beautiful way of looking at the world, but he's got this huge heart and this dream to basically empower people in the world and to create change on a massive scale. And so fortunately for me, I was in Bali and at one of his retreats, and one of the other ladies that was there, a lady called Namrita, who is absolutely incredible. She's been my partner now for over the last year.
Right.
She was one of the first female helicopter pilots in the Indian Army. Wow. To ever go into the Air Force. So, she's beautiful, feminine, but, very similar to me, had come from, some really tough training grounds and battlefields and all sorts of things. So, she's got this really strong strength and sense of courage about her. And so Ron asked us if we would be willing to, consider being the chief ambassadors for the movement. And I had obviously been sharing with him at the time about, my concern about what women needed to know in life, all of the things that you need to be successful as a woman, everything from your mindset through to understanding your finances and all of these changes that I was going through. And, how I really felt that this wasn't available in the mainstream to women. The current education that we go through doesn't teach you these things. These are, essential life skills that, every woman should know. And so he asked if we would participate. We said yes, and just never looked back. Just loved every minute of it. And so it's been a very dynamic ride, because we launched right at the beginning of COVID, and the business plan had to change. And so, once again, that's a startup company, and a lot of hands-on work, a lot of doing it myself late at night. So, very, very contrast through to what I was doing during the day in the finance company, but very, very complementary. And so I've met amazing women all around the world. I'm always, releasing, fantastic content, whether it be lives or our podcasts or the groups, the seminars that we do, the mentoring that we do. And the thing for me is just to see the incredible changes in people's life, and the opportunity that it brings when people learn to consider that life could be different to how they thought it must be, and to help them with the skills that they need to learn, to have holistic success, to have that deep fulfillment with who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, enjoying your work, managing all the day-to-day that life brings. And as you said before, really giving back to the world, contributing in a way that's meaningful to you. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey, absolutely loving it. We've clocked over our milestones this year. I set a goal of 1 million women in 5 years, so we're gonna ride this trajectory.
Wow.
So looking forward to that, and loving it. Once again, it's a combination of lots of my creativity. I've learned interviewing skills. I've learned how to edit videos and podcasts and put graphics together. So, that was a big learning for me, to realize you're never too old to learn a new skill. And, it's just that mental fear, that mental block that, you're too old, or it's going to be difficult, or I haven't done it before. You just got to roll up your sleeves and just get stuck into it. It's the only way you'll ever know whether you enjoy it or not. And that was also a wonderful life lesson that it brought me. You're never too late to start, creating a business, living your dreams, learning a new skill. Life is always there for you.
Wow, what a story. What a story. I will keep an eye on the development of the successful woman. I mean, 1 million women, that is an amazing target. How far are you off that?
A little way, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Eye on the prize, right? So yes, we do have good metrics. We measure it regularly, and that's a 5-year plan. But as with all things, things move exponentially when you get into that 3rd and 4th, 5th year of business. And that's to have touched 1 million women around the world, which, when you think about it, it's easy to do.
Oh, when you look at a 7 billion population, what's 1 million? Okay.
That's right.
Drop in the ocean. No, I love that story because, everything you said there is also another part of it that people don't see. And it's the reason why they don't actually do it, is fear. Okay. It is fear. I mean, you would have gone through moments of fear. What if, can I do this? What if it doesn't work? Can I actually do this? Talk me through that part of how you handle some of those fearful moments, going, hello, is this me? Can I actually handle this?
Yeah, so there's been a few key lessons that I've learned, and I was actually reflecting on that just last night when I was wrapping up my Sunday Night Live. And I was reflecting, wow, when I first started this, the whole thought of asking somebody to be my guest, the technical part of the recording, doing the research, preparing it, knowing how to ask the questions, it took a lot of energy, a lot of effort. And as you said, it was scary, going live into social media, whether it be on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Zoom, anywhere else, is very confronting, because you're there, and all that's between you and somebody else is a screen, and often you have no idea who's there. You don't know who's watching. You don't know if they're enjoying it. You don't know what's going on in their life. So you have to be willing to show up and reveal yourself no matter what, without expectations that you're going to get anything back, right? That's been the big learning for me, is the minute I worry about, is somebody liking this, am I coming across okay? It's all over Robert, because you're talking yourself out in your mind. But the biggest thing that I've realized is that it's always bigger in your mind than in reality. Always. So, this year I gave some, a few of my first big public presentations, and I had built that up to Ben-Hur in my mind. And that was good. It made me have that, appropriate amount of fear to make sure that I was prepared. I was well presented. I knew what I wanted to say. I knew why I was there and what was important about the message. But afterwards, it was like, wow, that wasn't actually as difficult as I thought it was going to be in my own mind. And so the discipline of realizing that in that moment of fear, it is literally just that irrational part of your mind that's taking you into something new, something you haven't done before, that's trying to pull you back into your comfort zone with that A/B conditioning. And you've just got to keep moving through, and you've just got to keep imagining where you want to be, regardless of what's presenting to you, regardless of the little thoughts that come in your mind, a little voice here in your head. If you've got a vision of yourself standing on stage, you've just got to stay true to that. And so it's really finding the practices in life to be disciplined, because the biggest thing I've realized is fear is always going to exist.
Yes.
Always. Yes. And we try to run away from it. You cannot run away from fear. It doesn't matter what you do, it will be there in some shape or some form. So, you're better to sort of grab it, hug it, embrace it, welcome that it's here, because it means you're about to go on another growth spurt. You're about to move through to the next layer of yourself, expand to the next person that you want to be. And you just have to breathe in and breathe out and do it anyway. Wow. So that's what I've learned the last year.
Absolutely. I mean, I was going to ask you about a gem that you can share with my audience. You've just done that. You've done that beautifully. It's how you're addressing fear. One of the things you said earlier, which I loved, was, you can take this to any part of your life. It's about showing up. I like that. You used the word, it's just about showing up and not worrying about the audience, about how they think about you, provided that you are actually believing that what you're doing is for, the good of humanity, for the community, for the others. It doesn't matter how other people think. It's the fact that that you're doing the right thing there. You're giving, you're contributing, and the rest takes care of itself.
Yeah, it's so true, because that energy of who you are, that's what people are connecting with. And the technical skills about, speaking, or how to have better pitch, or how to stand, or, all of those technical skills, they get better over time. But what's irreplaceable is the energy of you.
Yes.
Who are you? Why are you here? What do you believe in? What's true for you? That's what people are connecting with.
Absolutely.
So start with that, and the rest is easy. It's just practice. Practice, practice, practice. Repetition is the mother of all learning.
Joanna, that is what a way to end on our podcast. I think that those messages were very, very strong. And I can see that is what makes you are, because I feel the passion and the energy through the screen. It's getting a little bit hot on this side because of that energy that you're bringing across all the way from Queensland. Want to leave on your book. You're an author.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that before we wrap it all up.
Okay. So one of the things that I did as I was still working in the finance industry, I became fascinated with the study of building biology, which is how you create non-toxic spaces for people in their homes. And so the book, Mind, Body, Spaces, this is it. It's a compilation of 20 years of my learning, and it talks about how the spaces that we live and work in affect our health, our wealth, and our well-being. So the mind is all about how we create everything in our mind, and then, believe it or not, the spaces appear. You get attracted to your homes. There are lessons in your homes. There are patterns in your homes. There are things that you need to understand about why you're in the spaces that you're in. And then the body section is all about the more technical things, about electromagnetic fields, the effect of mold on people's health, the scientific things that can be measured, the things you get the meters out, and you measure and you go, look, these are the things that can happen in people's homes. And particularly here in Australia, whether it be in Melbourne or Sydney, there are so many homes that are affected by mold. There are, people who are tenants in buildings, and mold's not always visible, and people can get very, very sick. So that part of the book talks about the physical body and how do you detox and what's happening physically in your homes. And then the last part, spaces, is about how do you create the life that you really want to create? How do you go from joy to bliss? And what does your home have to do with it? So it's a wonderful compilation of a combination of my architectural learning, my building biology fascination. Around the same time that I was starting the book, I completed our home, the beachfront at Byron Bay. It was an ION Australia's Best Home. It was an eco home. It was the first bio home ever built in Australia. So, I've always loved being hands-on and actually making it into reality, into physical form. I even rendered the walls and did things in that construction project. But it was really about showing people that you need to think about the physical spaces that you live in differently. And if you're a business or if you're a business owner, I share stories in the book about the things that I learned as we were growing the Mortgage Ezy business around how the office environment affects your team and the health and wealth of your business. So yeah, if you're a business owner, or even if you're just in your own home, there's lots of gems in there, lots of exercises to take away. But the main thing was, I had never dreamt of writing a book. Ron had encouraged me to do it, and it was terrifying. It's like ripping open your soul, exposing all of who you are, letting go of all of those ideas that you can write well. Having the discipline to turn up and face those fears and judgments about yourself. So the actual process of writing a book is like giving birth to a new part of yourself. And a wonderful journey to go through, and just another reminder to me that when I set my mind to it, I can do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. Thank you. Where can we get hold of this book if someone wanted to buy it?
Yeah, so it's on Amazon or LinkedIn. Also happy to send you a message and connect you with the link. But yeah, it's Mind Body Spaces, and it's released on Amazon. So,
Right,
and if there's anything in there that you want to know more about, feel free to reach out to me. Love to explain it to you.
Fantastic. Joanna James, thank you so much for your time and insight and your experience and your wisdom. And I think my audience would really love this particular podcast. So having said that, this is Philip Fernandez signing off until the next time. And thank you very much, Joanna, again for your time with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Philip. It was an absolute honor. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye.